My name is Sadie, and I am 34 years old. I have spent the last 12 years building what I thought was an unshakable life. Our home, this beautiful mansion with rose gardens and floor-to-ceiling windows, was supposed to be forever. But 6 months ago, something shifted. My husband started coming home later. His phone always faced down, his smile just a little too forced. I told myself it was work stress that I was overthinking. This morning I found out I was wrong. What I discovered would destroy everything, but it would also set me free. Before we dive into what happened, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever felt that sinking feeling when you realize someone you trusted has been lying to you, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this story ends. Because what they planned for me was cruel, but what I had been planning was something they never saw coming. Stay with me. I met Derek when I was 22 years old, fresh out of design school and full of dreams about creating beautiful spaces where families could build memories. He was 26, already making a name for himself as a talented architect with an eye for modern design that still felt warm and livable. We fell in love over shared blueprints and late-night conversations about the kind of home we would build together someday. 3 years later, we got married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. A year after that, Lucas came into our lives, and I thought my heart might burst from how full it felt. Derek started his own architecture firm when Lucas was 2 years old. Those early years were tough. We lived in a small apartment, saved every penny, and I worked as a freelance interior designer while managing childcare. But we were a team. Every sacrifice felt worth it because we were building towards something bigger. And then 5 years ago, we finally did it. Derek designed our dream home, a sprawling property on the outskirts of town, with enough space for Lucas to run around and for me to have my own design studio. The master bedroom had windows that looked out over our garden. The kitchen was huge with marble countertops and an island where we would eat breakfast as a family every Sunday morning. Lucas had a playroom that connected to his bedroom, painted in soft blues with clouds on the ceiling that Derek had personally sketched. I remember the day we moved in. Derek carried me over the threshold, even though we had been married for 7 years by then. Lucas ran through every room, his laughter echoing off the walls. That night after we put Lucas to bed, Derek and I sat on the back porch with glasses of wine and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He put his arm around me and said this was just the beginning. I believed him. I believed in us. Derek's firm grew steadily. He landed bigger clients, designed office buildings and luxury condos that appeared in architecture magazines. I was so proud of him. I started taking on fewer design projects so I could be more present for Lucas, help with homework, drive him to soccer practice, be the mom I always wanted to be. Derek traveled more for work, attended conferences and meetings with investors. Sometimes he would be gone for 3 or 4 days at a time. I never questioned it. Why would I? We had built this life together on trust and love and partnership. About 6 months ago, Derek hired a new secretary. Her name was Amber, and she was 26 years old, recently moved to our city from somewhere out east. Derek mentioned her casually one evening over dinner, said she came highly recommended and was very organized. I met her a few weeks later when I stopped by Derek's office to drop off some documents he had forgotten at home. She was polite, smiled warmly, but there was something about the way she looked at me, a coolness in her eyes that did not quite match her friendly words. I brushed it off. Maybe she was just nervous meeting the boss's wife. But then things started changing. Derek began working later, sometimes not coming home until 10 or 11 at night. He said there was a huge project with an impossible deadline that he needed to be at the office to oversee everything. I understood. I heated up dinner for him when he got home, listened to him talk about stressed clients and supply chain issues. His phone started buzzing constantly during meals. He would glance at it, frown, then excuse himself to take calls in the other room. When I asked who it was, he said it was work stuff, nothing important. I watched him walk away, noticed how his shoulders tensed when he talked, how he lowered his voice. One night, about 3 months ago, I woke up at 2 a.m. and reached for Derek, but his side of the bed was empty. I found him downstairs and his study door closed, talking on the phone. His voice was soft, almost tender. I stood outside the door for a moment, not quite eavesdropping, but not walking away either. I heard him laugh, heard him say something about missing someone. My heart started beating faster. When he hung up and opened the door, he jumped when he saw me standing there. I asked who he was talking to at this hour. He said it was a client in a different time zone. The explanation made sense, but something in his eyes told me it was not the whole truth. I started noticing other things. Receipts for restaurants I had never been to. Charges on our credit card for expensive dinners and flowers I never received. When I asked about them, Derek said they were business expenses, gifts for clients, celebration dinners for closing deals. It all sounded reasonable, but there was a knot forming in my stomach that would not go away. Taylor. My best friend since college noticed something was off when we met for coffee one afternoon. She asked if everything was okay at home. I told her I was probably just being paranoid that marriage goes through phases, and this was just a busy time for Derek's career. She squeezed my hand and told me to trust my instincts that women always know when something is wrong, even if we cannot put it into words yet. 2 months ago, Derek told me the company needed a significant cash injection for a new project. He said it was a major opportunity that if we invested our savings now, it would pay off huge in a year or 2. We had worked so hard to build that nest egg money we had set aside for Lucas's college fund and our future. But Derek was so passionate when he explained the potential, showed me projections and timelines. I wanted to support him. I wanted to believe in his vision like I always had. So I agreed. We transferred $75,000 from our joint savings account into the company account. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. Or maybe I saw them and just did not want to believe what they meant. Because believing would mean facing the possibility that my marriage, my life, everything I thought was solid, might actually be crumbling. And I was not ready for that. Not yet. It was a Saturday morning in late October when I decided to surprise Derek at the office. He had been working 7 days a week for over a month, barely spending any time with Lucas and me. I thought maybe if I brought him lunch we could eat together, reconnect a little bit. I made his favorite sandwiches, turkey and avocado on sourdough, picked up coffee from the shop he liked, and drove to his office building. The parking lot was nearly empty, just Derek's black SUV and a silver sedan I did not recognize. I thought maybe one of his associates was there too, working on the weekend just like Derek. The elevator ride up to the 5th floor felt longer than usual. The building was so quiet without the usual bustle of weekday activity. My footsteps echoed in the hallway as I walked toward Derek's corner office. The door was slightly open and I could hear voices inside. One was definitely Derek's deep baritone. The other was female lighter with a laugh that sounded almost musical. I recognized it immediately. Amber. I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. Derek and Amber were sitting on the leather couch in his office, not quite touching but close enough that their knees were almost brushing. Papers were spread out on the coffee table in front of them, and Derek's laptop was open showing what looked like building plans. They both looked up when I entered, and I saw surprise flash across both their faces. Amber stood up quickly, smoothing down her skirt. Derek's expression shifted from surprise to something like guilt, but then he smiled and it was gone so fast I thought maybe I had imagined it. I held up the bag of food and coffee. "Just thought I would bring you lunch," I said, trying to keep my voice light. Derek stood and walked over, kissed me on the cheek. "That is so sweet, honey. We are just going over the Richardson project. You remember that one, right? The downtown mixed-use development." I nodded. Amber smiled at me, thanked me for thinking of them. Her eyes were friendly, but there was something underneath, something sharp. I stayed for a few minutes, made small talk, watched how Amber looked at Derek when she thought I was not paying attention. There was a familiarity there that made my skin prickle. When I left, I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. I could not shake the feeling that I had interrupted something, though I could not say exactly what. They had been working just like Derek said, but the air in that office had felt charged, somehow intimate in a way that had nothing to do with the papers on the table. Over the next few weeks, Derek became even more distant. He stopped asking about my day, stopped playing catch with Lucas in the backyard after work. When we went to bed at night, he turned away from me, said he was exhausted. I tried initiating conversations about us, about whether everything was okay, but he always had a reason to cut it short. Too much work stress, too many things on his mind. I started feeling like a stranger in my own marriage, watching my husband drift further and further away and having no idea how to reach him. Lucas noticed too. One evening at dinner, our son asked why Daddy did not laugh anymore. The question hung in the air. Derek forced a smile, ruffled Lucas's hair, said he was just busy but everything was fine. But Lucas looked at me with those perceptive 8-year-old eyes, and I knew he did not believe it any more than I did. Then 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I was in the garden deadheading roses on a Wednesday afternoon. Lucas was at a friend's house for a playdate. I heard Derek's voice coming from the driveway where his car was parked with the door open. He must have thought I had left to pick up Lucas. His voice carried across the yard. "Don't worry, baby. I will figure it out. She won't be a problem much longer." I froze, pruning shears in hand. "Baby." He called someone baby. "The house." "Yeah, it is in both our names, but my lawyer said we can work it out. Once the baby comes, we will have everything we need. Just be patient." My heart stopped. The baby. Someone was having a baby. Derek's baby. And they were talking about my house. Our house. The home we built together. I stood there behind the rose bushes, hidden from view as Derek finished his conversation. When he got out of the car and walked toward the house, I ducked down, waiting until he went inside before I moved. That night, I could not eat dinner. I pushed food around my plate while Derek talked about some client issue, his voice casual, like nothing was wrong, like he had not just been on the phone planning to take away everything I had worked for. When he reached across the table to take my hand, I pulled away, said I was not feeling well. He shrugged and went back to his meal. I lay awake that entire night, staring at the ceiling, listening to Derek snore beside me. Part of me wanted to wake him up, demand answers, scream at him until he told me the truth. But another part, the part that had gone very still and very cold, knew that I needed to be smart about this. If Derek was planning something, I needed to know exactly what it was before I made any moves. The next morning after Derek left for work and Lucas was at school, I called Taylor. I told her everything, the phone call I had overheard, the late nights, the way Amber looked at Derek. Taylor was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. "I have a friend who is a private investigator. If you want to know the truth, he can find it." "Do you want his number?" I said yes. I called him that afternoon. His name was Gary, and he had a calm professional voice that somehow made this nightmare feel slightly less terrifying. He said he could start right away, that these cases usually took about 2 weeks to gather enough evidence. I gave him Derek's information. Amber's name told him everything I knew. When I hung up, I felt sick and relieved at the same time. I was finally doing something instead of just waiting for my life to fall apart. Gary worked fast. 10 days later, he called and asked me to meet him at a coffee shop across town somewhere Derek would never go. I drove there with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Gary was waiting in a corner booth, a manila folder on the table in front of him. He did not waste time on pleasantries. "Mrs. Sadie, I am going to be direct with you because you deserve to know the truth. Your husband has been having an affair with Amber for approximately 4 months. They meet at the Riverside Hotel at least twice a week. They also spend time at her apartment on Grove Street." He slid the folder across to me. I opened it with numb fingers. Photographs spilled out. Derek and Amber walking hand in hand down a street I did not recognize. Derek and Amber kissing outside a restaurant. Derek and Amber entering a hotel, his hand on the small of her back. And then the one that made my breath catch in my throat. Derek standing behind Amber, his hands on her stomach, both of them smiling at something off camera. Her stomach, which was round, noticeably pregnant. Gary kept talking, his voice steady and factual. "She is approximately 14 weeks along based on what I was able to find out. I also looked into the financial records you gave me access to. Your husband has been transferring money from the company account to Amber's personal account. So far, around $150,000 over the past 3 months. $150,000. That was more than double what he had asked me to invest in the company. Money that should have been for our business, for our family, for Lucas's future. He had been giving it to her, buying her gifts, paying her rent, funding their affair while I sat at home cooking his dinners and trusting him completely." "There is more," Gary said gently. "I found text messages between them." He handed me printed transcripts. I forced myself to read them, even though every word felt like a knife. Amber writing about how she could not wait to move into the mansion, how she had been looking at nursery furniture online, how she wanted to redecorate the master bedroom. Derek responding that he was working on it, that his lawyer said they could force a sale of the house in the divorce, that I was too naive to fight back. Too naive. That is what he thought of me. The woman who had supported him through building his business, who had given up her own career to raise his son, who had trusted him with every piece of her heart. He thought I was too weak, too foolish to stand up for myself. "I am sorry," Gary said. "I know this is not what you wanted to hear, but you needed to know. Do you have a lawyer?" I shook my head. "Not yet. You should get one. Soon. And you should not tell your husband that you know anything yet. Gather all your financial documents, make copies of everything, and talk to a lawyer before you confront him. That is my advice." I thanked him, paid him for his work, and drove home in a daze. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. When I did, the house looked exactly the same. Lucas's backpack by the door. The photos on the wall of our family vacations, our wedding day, Derek holding newborn Lucas in the hospital. But everything had changed. This was not my safe haven anymore. It was a lie I had been living in. That afternoon, while Lucas was at soccer practice, I started making calls. Taylor gave me the name of a divorce attorney. She knew someone tough and smart. Her name was Patricia, and she could see me the next day. I also started going through our financial records, printing out bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts. Everything Gary had said was true. The money was gone. transferred to Amber's account in increments small enough that I had not noticed when I casually checked our balances, but large enough that together they represented years of savings. I found other things too. Emails between Derek and Amber, planning trips together, talking about the future, discussing baby names. Amber wanted a girl. Derek said he did not care as long as the baby was healthy. They talked about selling my home using the money to buy something bigger, something that Amber called more suitable for their growing family. My home. The one I had poured my soul into decorating, where I had raised my son, where every corner held a memory I cherished. They wanted to take it away like it meant nothing. That evening, Derek came home late as usual. I had made dinner, fed Lucas, and sent him upstairs to do homework. When Derek walked in, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. He kissed the top of my head, grabbed a plate of the pasta I had made. "How was your day?" he asked, like he cared, like he had not spent his afternoon texting another woman about their future together. "Fine," I said. "Yours busy. This Richardson project is killing me, but we are almost through the worst of it. Lies. All lies." I watched him eat my food, watched him scroll through his phone with a little smile playing at his lips. Probably texting her, probably making plans. And I sat there silent, letting him think he had fooled me, letting him believe I was the naive little wife who would never suspect a thing. Because I had learned something important. Knowledge was power, and I was not going to give away my power by showing my hand too soon. The next morning I met with Patricia. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. She listened to everything, looked through the evidence Gary had gathered, reviewed the financial statements I brought. Then she leaned back in her chair and said something I will never forget. "Your husband made a critical mistake. He thought you were weak. But weak women do not build successful design businesses. Weak women do not raise strong kids while supporting their husband's dreams. You are not weak, Sadie, and we are going to make sure he knows it." Patricia laid out a strategy. We would file for divorce, but with a twist. We would simultaneously file charges against Derek for misappropriation of marital assets. The money he gave Amber was from our joint savings and from the company which I had invested in. That made it partly mine. By giving it to his mistress without my knowledge or consent, he had essentially stolen from me. Patricia said if we played this right, we could freeze all our assets, prevent Derek from selling anything or moving any more money. We could also go after Amber for receiving stolen funds if we wanted to, though. Patricia said that was a harder case to make. "I want the house," I told Patricia. "Whatever happens, I want to keep my home. Lucas should not have to lose his home because of his father's choices." Patricia nodded. "We will fight for it. And given your husband's behavior, I think we have a strong case. But you need to be prepared for this to get ugly. He will not go down without a fight." "I do not care," I said. And I meant it. I was done being the understanding wife. I was done making excuses for him. Derek wanted a war, I would give him one. 2 days after my meeting with Patricia, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. A woman's voice came through cool and confident. "Mrs. Sadie, this is Amber. I think we need to talk." My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. "About what I think you know. Can you meet me this afternoon?" "There is a cafe on Maple Street, the one with the blue awning. 3 o'clock, I will be there," I said, and hung up before she could say anything else. I called Patricia immediately. She told me to go to listen to what Amber had to say, but not to agree to anything or make any promises. "And definitely record the conversation if you can," Patricia added. "I need to know exactly what she says." At 2:55, I walked into the cafe. Amber was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of herbal tea in front of her. She was wearing a cream-colored maternity dress that showed off her bump. She looked almost glowing, that pregnancy radiance people always talk about. She smiled when she saw me like we were old friends meeting for a catch-up. I sat down across from her, did not bother ordering anything. "What do you want, Amber?" She took a sip of her tea, taking her time. "I want us to be civilized about this. Derek and I are together now. We are having a baby. And I think it would be better for everyone, especially for your son, if we could handle this divorce quietly and without drama." "Civilized," I repeated. "You are sleeping with my husband carrying his child, and you want to talk about being civilized?" She shrugged, unbothered. "Look, I am not the first woman to fall in love with a married man, and I won't be the last. Derek and I have something real. What you two have has been over for a while. You just have not admitted it yet. Is that what he told you? Among other things." She leaned forward, her expression turning calculating. "Here is the reality, Sadie. Derek loves me. He wants to build a life with me and our baby. Your house would be perfect for us. It has enough space for a nursery, for a home office for me. Derek designed it after all. It makes sense that he should keep it." I stared at her, genuinely stunned by her audacity. "You want my house. The house I helped pay for. The house where I am raising my son. Our son will visit, of course. Derek will have custody rights. But the primary residence should be with us, with the new family." She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was discussing dinner plans instead of dismantling my entire life. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and fierce. But I remembered Patricia's advice. Stay calm. Let her talk. Let her tell you everything. So I took a breath and asked, "Does Derek know you are here?" Amber smiled. "It was his idea. He thought it would be easier if I explained things to you woman to woman. He thinks you will be more reasonable this way, more understanding." "Understanding?" I repeated slowly. "You want me to understand that my husband cheated on me, got you pregnant, and now you want to take my house and raise your child in the home I built. When you put it like that, it sounds harsh. But think about it logically. You will get alimony child support for Lucas. You can find a nice apartment or a smaller house. You do not need all that space. We do. And Derek's name is on the deed too. Legally, he has every right. Except the deed is in both our names, I pointed out, which means he cannot sell it without my consent." Amber's smile tightened just a fraction. "Derek's lawyer is very good. He says that in a divorce, assets get divided. The house will likely be sold and the proceeds split. But Derek and I were hoping you would be reasonable and just sign your half over to him. It would save everyone the hassle of a lengthy court battle. And honestly, Sadie, do you really want to go through that? All the lawyer fees, the fighting dragging Lucas through it all, would not it be easier to just let go?" I looked at this woman, this stranger who had walked into my life and blown it apart, and I realized something. She actually believed she was going to win. She thought I would just roll over and give her everything. She had no idea what was coming. "I will think about it," I said finally. "That is all I can promise right now." Amber looked pleased, like she had expected more resistance. "That is all I ask. Just think about what is best for everyone, especially Lucas. Kids are resilient, you know. He will adjust." She stood up, placed a hand on her stomach in that way pregnant women do. "I hope we can all be adults about this, for the baby's sake." Then she walked out, leaving me sitting there with my hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I drove home and immediately called Patricia. I had recorded the entire conversation on my phone. Patricia listened to it twice. "This is gold," she said. She just admitted to everything. The affair, the plan to take your house, the fact that Derek put her up to this. And she did it all on tape. This changes things, Sadie. This changes everything. That evening, Derek came home whistling. Actually whistling. He kissed me on the cheek, asked what was for dinner. I told him I had made chicken his favorite. We ate together. Lucas chattering about school, Derek nodding along, playing the role of devoted father. After Lucas went to bed, Derek poured himself a drink and settled into the living room to watch television. I stood in the doorway watching him, this man I had loved for 15 years. This stranger. "Derek," I said, "we need to talk." He looked up, saw something in my face that made him put down his drink. "What is it? I met Amber today. She told me about you two. About the baby. About your plans for this house." The color drained from his face. "Sadie, I can explain." But I was already talking, my voice surprisingly steady. "She said you want a divorce. That you want me to sign over my half of the house so you can raise your new family here. Is that true?" Derek stood up, ran his hands through his hair. "Look, I did not want you to find out like this. I wanted to tell you myself in my own time. Amber should not have done that. So it is true." He took a breath. "Yes, I am in love with her, Sadie. I have been for months. I tried to fight it, but I could not. And now with the baby coming, I need to do the right thing. I need to be with her. The right thing," I repeated. "And what about Lucas? What about the life we built? You will always be Lucas's mother. That will not change. But you and I, we have not been happy for a long time. You know that. We have just been going through the motions. Amber makes me feel alive again." Each word was a punch to the gut. But I stayed standing, stayed strong. "And the house," Derek sighed. "My lawyer says we will have to divide everything. The house will probably be sold. But I was hoping you would be reasonable and just let me buy out your half. It makes sense. I designed it. This was my vision. Our vision." I corrected. "I helped build this too, Derek. With my money, my time, my love." "I know, and you will be compensated fairly. I have already talked to a lawyer about what you are entitled to. You will get alimony, child support. I will make sure you and Lucas are taken care of. But this house, Amber and I need it. For the baby." I looked at him, really looked at him, at his expensive shirt, his designer watch, his confident posture. He actually thought this was all settled. He thought I would just accept it. Too naive to fight. That is what his text to Amber had said. He believed I was too weak, too trusting, too in love with him to stand up for myself. "I will not make this easy for you," I said quietly. "If you want a divorce, fine. But I will not just hand over my home. You will have to take it from me." Derek's expression hardened. "Do not make this ugly, Sadie. Think about Lucas." I am thinking about Lucas. I am thinking about how his father cheated on his mother, how his father wants to kick us out of our home for his pregnant mistress. I am thinking about what kind of example that sets. Derek's jaw clenched. "My lawyer is very good. If you fight this, you will just end up spending all your money on legal fees and losing anyway. Be smart about this." "Oh, I am being smart," I said, probably for the first time in months. I walked out of the room, left him standing there. I went upstairs to our bedroom, gathered some of my things, and moved them into the guest room. If Derek wanted to play these games, fine. But I was not going to share a bed with him for one more night. I locked the door behind me, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally let myself cry. Not because I was sad, though I was, but because I was angry, furious, and I was done being the person who got walked all over. The next morning I called Patricia. File everything I told her. I want to move forward as soon as possible. Patricia said the paperwork would be ready by the end of the day. That Monday morning, Derek got served at his office. The divorce petition, and more importantly, the petition to freeze all marital assets, and the charges of misappropriation of funds. He called me within an hour, absolutely furious. "What the hell are you doing, Sadie? You are freezing my accounts. You are accusing me of theft. You stole from our family," I said calmly. "You took our savings and gave it to your mistress. That is what the evidence shows. That money was for the business, really. Because I have receipts for jewelry, a car for Amber, rent payments on her apartment." "That does not sound like business expenses to me," Derek sputtered. "You are going to regret this. My lawyer is going to destroy you in court." "We will see," I said, and hung up. Patricia called me later that day with an update. The court had granted a temporary freeze on all assets pending a hearing. Derek could not sell the house, could not move money around, could not do anything without court approval. "We had him locked down." "Good," Patricia said. "Now let him squirm." Amber called me that evening screaming, "You cannot do this. That house should be ours. You are just being vindictive." "I am protecting my rights," I said calmly. "If you and Derek had planned better, maybe you would not be in this position." She threatened to sue me, said Derek's lawyer would make sure I got nothing. I told her to do what she needed to do and ended the call. I was not afraid of her anymore. I was not afraid of either of them. Over the next 2 weeks, things escalated. Derek moved out, went to stay at a hotel since he could not afford to rent an apartment with all his accounts frozen. Amber kept calling, kept texting, alternating between threats and attempts at negotiation. Patricia said to ignore all of it, that they were panicking because they realized they had underestimated me. Then Gary called with more information. Turns out Amber had a history. She had been involved with another married man 2 years ago, a CEO of a tech company in another state. That relationship ended when the man's wife found out and threatened legal action. Amber left town with a large settlement, essentially hush money. Gary also found evidence that Amber had significant debt credit cards, maxed out unpaid rent at her previous apartments. She was not just in love with Derek. She was looking for someone to take care of her financially, and I was in her way. Patricia added all of this to our case file. We were building an argument that Derek had been manipulated, that Amber was a gold digger who targeted married men, that this was a pattern of behavior. It would not absolve Derek of what he did, but it would show the court that this was not just a simple affair. This was calculated, predatory even. The preliminary hearing was set for early December. Derek hired an expensive lawyer named Bernard, someone with a reputation for winning messy divorces. But Patricia was not intimidated. She had handled worse, she told me. And we had something Bernard did not have. The truth documented and irrefutable. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The years of marriage, the trust I had given Derek, the way he had betrayed it all. Part of me still could not believe this was my life. But another part, the part that had grown stronger over these weeks, knew that I was doing the right thing. I was fighting not just for myself, but for Lucas, for the home and stability he deserved. The hearing was held in a courthouse downtown, a gray building that smelled like old paper and floor polish. Derek was already there with Bernard when Patricia and I arrived. He would not look at me. Amber sat in the back row, her hands protectively over her stomach, glaring daggers at me. I held my head high and walked past them both. Judge Harrison presided. He was an older man with silver hair and a stern expression that gave nothing away. Bernard spoke first, arguing that this was a simple divorce case being complicated by unfounded accusations. He painted Derek as a hard-working businessman who had made a mistake in his personal life but had never stolen anything. The money transfers to Amber were gifts, not theft. Derek had every right to spend his own money however he wanted. Then Patricia stood up. She methodically walked through every piece of evidence, the bank statement showing money from our joint account and the company account being transferred to Amber, the emails and texts between Derek and Amber planning to take the house, the recording of Amber admitting to their scheme, the evidence of Amber's past pattern of targeting wealthy married men. Patricia was calm, thorough, devastating. Bernard tried to object to discredit the evidence, but Judge Harrison shut him down. The judge reviewed the documents himself, taking his time. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of papers rustling. Finally, Judge Harrison looked up. "Mr. Derek, did you transfer approximately $150,000 to Miss Amber without your wife's knowledge or consent?" Derek glanced at Bernard, then back at the judge. "I gave Amber money, yes. But it was not theft. It was my money, too. Money from joint accounts and from a company your wife helped fund," Judge Harrison clarified. Derek hesitated. "Yes, but I was going to pay it back. But you did not tell your wife about it. You hid the transactions. Is that correct?" "I did not want to upset her." Judge Harrison looked unimpressed. He flipped through more papers, read the text messages between Derek and Amber. Then he delivered his preliminary ruling. The asset freeze would remain in place. Derek was ordered to return the money transferred to Amber, or Amber would be held liable for receiving marital assets. The house would not be sold or transferred until the final divorce hearing. And given the evidence of deception and financial misconduct, Derek would be responsible for his own legal fees and would have to pay Patricia's fees as well. Derek looked like he had been punched. Amber made a small sound of distress from the back of the courtroom. Bernard tried to argue, but Judge Harrison was done. He set a date for the final hearing in 2 months and dismissed us. Outside the courthouse, Patricia smiled at me. "That went exactly as I hoped. Derek is going to have a hard time recovering from this." And Amber just realized she hitched her wagon to the wrong horse. That night, Derek called me. His voice was subdued, defeated. "Sadie, can we talk?" "Please. What is there to talk about?" "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But do we really need to destroy each other over this? Can we not figure something out that works for both of us?" "You mean something that gets you out of paying me back and lets you keep the house?" Derek sighed. "I just want this to be over. I am tired of fighting." "Then stop fighting," I said. "Accept that you do not get everything you want just because you want it. You betrayed me, Derek. You stole from our family. There are consequences for that." He was quiet for a long time. "What about Amber and the baby? What about them?" "That is your problem to figure out. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." I hung up. I did not feel triumphant. I just felt tired, but also relieved, because I could see the end now. It was not going to be easy, but I was going to get through it. And I was going to come out the other side still standing, still in my home, still whole. Over the next few weeks, things fell apart for Derek and Amber. Without access to the money Derek had been giving her, Amber could not afford the lifestyle she had gotten used to. The car Derek bought her got repossessed because he had not paid it off and could not make the payments with his accounts frozen. Her apartment rent went unpaid. Creditors started calling her for the debts she had racked up on credit cards, debts she had counted on Derek paying off. Gary told me that Amber and Derek had a huge fight at her apartment. Neighbors heard shouting, heard Amber screaming that Derek had promised her everything and delivered nothing. A few days later, Amber left town, just packed up and disappeared. Gary tracked her to another city 3 states away. It seemed when things got tough, Amber cut her losses and ran. There was no way to verify if the baby was even Derek's. She refused to communicate with him, refused to agree to a paternity test. Derek was devastated. Not because he lost me, but because he lost her. He had given up his marriage, his reputation, his financial stability for a woman who only wanted him when he could pay her way. Now he had nothing. His firm had to let go of several employees because of the asset freeze and the loss of capital. His business partners were considering buying him out. He was living in a cheap extended stay hotel, driving a rental car, eating takeout every night. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even happy, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad for what we had lost, sad for Lucas having to watch his father fall apart, sad for all the wasted years. The final divorce hearing was in late January. Bernard and Derek offered a settlement. Derek would keep a portion of the company assets enough to rebuild his business. I would keep the house full custody of Lucas, with Derek having visitation rights and a significant alimony payment for 5 years. Derek would also repay the money he had taken in installments if necessary. It was not everything Patricia thought we could get if we went to trial, but it was fair. More importantly, it would be over. I agreed to the settlement. We signed the papers in a conference room, not even looking at each other. Judge Harrison approved it, and just like that, my marriage was officially over. 15 years reduced to a stack of legal documents and divided assets. Lucas took it hard. He cried when Derek officially moved out, when the reality of his parents not being together anymore really sank in. I held him and let him cry and promised him that even though things were different now, he was still loved. Both his parents still loved him, even if they could not love each other anymore. It took time, but slowly Lucas started to adjust. Derek came by every other weekend to pick him up. The visits were awkward at first, but eventually they found their rhythm. As for me, I started rebuilding. I took on a few new design clients' projects that excited me and reminded me why I had fallen in love with this work in the first place. I redesigned Lucas's room, letting him choose new paint colors and decorations. We made the house feel fresh, less like a mausoleum of my failed marriage, and more like a home for just the two of us. Taylor was there for every step. Late-night phone calls when I could not sleep, weekend trips to the beach to clear my head, lunches where we talked about everything and nothing. She reminded me that I was more than just Derek's wife, that I had my own identity and strength. Slowly, I started to believe her. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Derek came to pick up Lucas on a Saturday afternoon. It was one of the first warm days of spring, and I was in the garden planting new roses to replace the ones that had not survived the winter. Derek stood at the edge of the driveway looking uncomfortable. Lucas ran past him to the car, excited about their plans to go to a baseball game. When Lucas was out of earshot, Derek walked over to where I was kneeling in the dirt. "I am sorry," he said quietly. I stood up, brushed the soil off my jeans. "For everything. For what I did to you, to Lucas, to us. I was selfish and stupid, and I threw away the best thing I ever had." I looked at him. He had aged in these months. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there before, gray in his hair that I did not remember. He looked tired, worn down by the weight of his choices. I did not feel anger anymore when I looked at him, just a distant kind of pity. "What happened to Amber?" I asked. Derek gave a bitter laugh. "She is gone. Moved somewhere out west. She never contacted me about the baby. I do not even know if she had it or if it was mine. I hired a lawyer to try to get information, establish paternity rights, but she refused to respond. Eventually, I gave up. I think she found someone else, someone who could give her what she wanted. I was just a stepping stone." We stood there in silence for a moment. The breeze rustled through the trees, carried the scent of the roses I was planting. "You were always too good for me," Sadie Derrick said. "I did not see it then, but I see it now. I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for my sake, but for yours. So you can move on without carrying all this anger." "I am not angry," I said, and realized it was true. I had been for a long time. But somewhere along the way, I had let it go, because holding on to it only hurt me. I do not forgive you, not yet. Maybe not ever. But I do not hate you either. You are Lucas's father, and you will always be part of my life because of him. We have to find a way to make that work." Derek nodded, his eyes glistening. "Thank you for being the bigger person. You did not have to be." "Yes, I did," I said. "For Lucas and for myself. Because staying bitter and hateful would have meant you still had power over me. And I could not let that happen." Derek left a few minutes later with Lucas in the car. I watched them drive away, then went back to my roses. The garden was coming back to life after a hard winter. New growth pushing through the soil buds forming on the branches. It felt symbolic somehow, this act of planting and nurturing and watching things grow. That evening, Lucas came home tired but happy, full of stories about the baseball game. We made popcorn and watched a movie together on the couch, his head on my shoulder. These moments I realized were what mattered. Not the big house or the perfect marriage or the life I had thought I was supposed to have. Just this. My son and me safe and together and okay. I thought about everything I had learned over these months. That trust is precious and should not be given lightly. That standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. That sometimes the life you thought you wanted is not the life you were meant to have. That endings can be beginnings if you are brave enough to see them that way. I had been so focused on what I lost that I almost missed what I gained. My self-respect, my strength, my independence. The knowledge that I could face the worst and come out the other side still standing. These things were worth more than any marriage, any house, any promise of forever that could be broken so easily. Lucas fell asleep halfway through the movie. I covered him with a blanket, turned off the television, and sat in the quiet darkness of my living room. My living room. My house. My life. It looked different than I had planned, but it was mine, and that was enough. A year and a half after the divorce, I ran into Derek at Lucas's school play. We sat a few rows apart watching our son perform in a too-big costume, delivering his lines with earnest concentration. After the show, we both went backstage to congratulate Lucas. He hugged both of us, his face flushed with excitement. "Did you see me? Was I good?" "You were amazing," I told him. Derek agreed, ruffling Lucas's hair. The three of us stood there together, not a family anymore, but still connected by this incredible kid we had made. It was bittersweet, but it was okay. Better than okay, actually. It was real. Derek and I exchanged a few words about Lucas's upcoming birthday, coordinating our schedules so we could both be there. It was civil-friendly even. We were not friends, probably never would be. But we were not enemies either. We were two people who had loved each other once and hurt each other badly, but who were trying to do better now. For Lucas. For ourselves. As I drove home that night, I thought about the woman I had been when this all started. The one who stood in her beautiful mansion believing her life was perfect, not seeing the cracks forming in the foundation. That woman seemed so naive now, so trusting. I did not miss her exactly, but I felt a certain tenderness toward her. She had loved with her whole heart. There was something brave in that, even if it ended in betrayal. The woman I was now was different. Harder in some ways, but stronger. More cautious, but also more confident. I knew my worth now. I knew what I would and would not accept. I knew that I could survive the worst day of my life and wake up the next morning and keep going. That knowledge was its own kind of power. I pulled into my driveway, looked up at my house. The lights were on in the living room, a warm glow against the darkness. Home. My sanctuary. My safe place. The physical representation of everything I had fought for and refused to give up. I had won this battle not through revenge or cruelty, but through standing firm and demanding what was rightfully mine. Inside, I made myself a cup of tea and curled up on the couch with a design magazine. My business was doing well. I had just landed a major contract to redesign a boutique hotel downtown. Lucas was thriving in school, making friends, playing sports, adjusting to our new normal better than I could have hoped. And me? I was okay. Some days were harder than others, but I was genuinely, truly okay. I thought about Amber, sometimes wondered where she was, if she ever thought about the lives she had disrupted. I hoped she found whatever she was looking for, though I suspected she was still chasing the next wealthy man who might give her the lifestyle she craved. That was her path to walk, her mistakes to make. I had my own path now, and it did not include making room for people who saw me as an obstacle rather than a person. The house settled around me, the familiar creaks and sighs of a home lived in and loved. This place had witnessed my happiest moments and my darkest hours. It had seen me as a bride, a mother, a betrayed wife, a fighter, and now finally as a woman standing on her own. The walls held all those versions of me, and I was grateful for each one, even the broken ones, because they taught me how strong I really was. Tomorrow, Lucas would come home from Derek's and we would make pancakes for breakfast like we did every Sunday. We would work on his school project together, maybe go for a bike ride if the weather was nice. Simple things, ordinary moments that made up a life. Not the life I had planned, but a good life nonetheless. A life I had built from the ashes of the one that burned down. I finished my tea, rinsed, the cup, turned off the lights. Upstairs, I got ready for bed in the master bedroom I had reclaimed as my own. New bedding, new curtains, but the same view of the garden I loved. I stood at the window for a moment, looking out at the moon hanging over the trees. Somewhere out there, Derek was in his small apartment, probably thinking about all his regrets. Amber was in another city, possibly repeating her patterns with someone new. But here in this moment, I was at peace. I climbed into bed, pulled the covers up to my chin. Sleep came easier these days. The nightmares had faded, replaced by dreams of the future. Lucas graduating high school, going off to college. My business expanding, maybe hiring employees, taking on bigger projects. Someday when I was ready, perhaps even opening my heart to someone new. Someone who would see my strength and value it instead of taking advantage of my trust. But that was all in the future. Tonight I was content to simply be. To exist in this space I had protected, to breathe deeply and know that I was safe, I was home, I was enough. The last thing I thought before drifting off to sleep was a lesson I had learned the hard way, but would carry with me forever. That you can love someone with everything you have and still lose them. That betrayal can break you, but it does not have to destroy you. That a mansion is just a building, but a home is something you create with your own courage and determination. And that sometimes the person you are saving is yourself. And that I had learned was the most important person to save. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Have you discovered strength you did not know you had? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help others who might be going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are stronger than they think. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that no matter what you are facing, you have the power to stand up for yourself and come out the other side still standing. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone make you feel like you are too weak to fight for what is yours. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.